The loner rancher waited for his mail-order bride, but a Chinese woman who didn't speak English came. The dusty Montana plains stretched out for miles, the sky a pale canvas of blues and grays as the wind whispered across endless fields. Jedediah Boone, known across the county as the loner rancher, stood on the porch of his quiet homestead, a letter crushed in his calloused hand. For years Jed had worked these lands alone, tending cattle, mending fences, and watching seasons change without a soul to share them with. His neighbors pitied him. Some mocked him, saying he was too set in his ways, too withdrawn to ever find a woman who could handle his silence and the rugged life he lived. But loneliness has a way of creeping into a man's bones until even silence feels deafening. So when Jed wrote to a mail-order bride agency, he never thought the day would truly come when someone would step off the coach to meet him. His heart pounded as the rickety stage rolled into town, dust clouds swirling around the tired horses. He stood stiffly, boots planted, hat low over his brow, scanning the passengers. At last a slender figure stepped down, clutching a small cloth bundle, eyes darting nervously. The woman was not what he expected. Instead of the Western-born bride he'd imagined, she was clearly foreign, Chinese, her face delicate but worn from hardship, her hair pinned neatly, though strands blew loose in the wind. When she looked at him, her dark eyes held both fear and determination. The town fell into murmurs instantly. Men muttered under their breath. Women shook their heads. Jed's stomach twisted. She bowed slightly, said something in a soft voice he didn't understand, then lifted the paper in her hand, a marriage contract, signed and sealed. She had come across the ocean, traveled days by rail and coach, only to find a man who couldn't speak her tongue. The crowd laughed, whispering cruelly. Jed's fists clenched, shame and anger mixing. He had asked for a wife, not ridicule. And yet, as he looked into her trembling eyes, he saw something familiar. Isolation. She too had no one. He stepped forward, tipped his hat, and in a gruff voice said, "You're here now." "That's enough." He picked up her bundle, ignoring the jeers, and led her silently toward his wagon. She followed, quiet as a shadow. Two strangers, one bound by silence, the other by language, heading into a future neither of them expected, yet one both desperately needed. The ranch was a place of vast quiet, rolling hills broken only by the bawl of cattle or the creak of wooden fences. Jed brought the woman, her name, he learned from the contract, was Mei Ling, into the small house that smelled faintly of cedar and firewood. She stood at the threshold, hesitant, eyes scanning the simple furnishings, her fingers brushing over the rough wood of the table as if anchoring herself to reality. Jed poured water from the pitcher and set it before her, awkward, unsure what to do next. They tried to speak, but the gulf of language hung heavy. She said words in her tongue, soft and lilting, and he answered in English, rough and clipped. Neither understood, but their eyes searched for meaning in silence. Days slipped into weeks, their life stitched together by gestures, expressions, and the quiet rhythm of chores. She rose at dawn, folded laundry, learned to bake bread in the old oven, and even followed him to the fields, her delicate hands attempting the heavy work without complaint. Jed had never seen such determination, yet at night he sometimes heard her crying softly, holding a small carved wooden pendant she wore around her neck. He didn't know her story, only guessed at the pain of leaving everything behind. The town's whispers did not die. Every trip for supplies was laced with judgment. Why couldn't he find a real woman? They sneered. Jed's jaw tightened each time. But Mei Ling's quiet dignity disarmed even the cruelest gossip. She walked with her chin high, her silence stronger than any insult. Over time, an unspoken bond grew between them. When Jed cut his hand fixing a fence, she rushed to him, her small hand surprisingly firm as she cleaned the wound. Their eyes met, his blue, her dark brown, and for a moment words were unnecessary. That night, as fire crackled in the hearth, he tried to thank her, fumbling, but she placed her hand gently on his, whispering in her language. He didn't know the words, but he felt them in his bones. Slowly, he realized that perhaps love wasn't born from talk, but from presence, from standing beside each other even when the world mocked. For the first time in years, Jed felt the walls around his heart begin to crack. One autumn evening, as orange light bathed the fields, Jed hitched the wagon for town, his jaw set. Mei Ling climbed beside him, her hair tied neatly, her pendant glinting. They rode silently, the air heavy with unspoken purpose. In town, people gathered as always, curious, judgmental. Jed stepped down, helped her from the wagon, and led her to the steps of the church. The old pastor raised his brows, surprised, but Jed's voice was steady as he said, "We're here to be wed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You'd marry her? A foreigner who can't even speak your tongue?" One man spat. Jed's eyes flashed with fire as he turned to face them. "I've spent half my life in silence." She knows silence better than anyone. She's strong, she's kind, and she crossed the world to stand here. "That's more than any of you have ever done," the crowd muttered, some ashamed, others angry. But Jed ignored them. He turned to Mei Ling, his large hands trembling as he placed them over hers. "I don't know your words," he whispered, "but I know you. That's enough." Mei Ling's eyes brimmed with tears. She squeezed his hands and, in broken English, softly said, "Husband." That one word silenced the crowd more than any speech could. The pastor began the vows, simple and short, and when Jed placed the plain gold ring on her finger, it was as though two isolated souls had finally found home in each other. From that day on, no ridicule could touch them. The ranch no longer felt empty. Children's laughter would one day echo there, and even if no one else understood their language, they understood each other. Jed, the loner rancher, had found a partner, and Mei Ling, the foreign bride who came with nothing but courage, had found a family. Their story became a whispered legend in the town, not of shame, but of a love that transcended borders, silence and words themselves. And friends, if this story touched your heart, if you believe love can break walls of loneliness, silence, and prejudice, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. More stories of hope, courage, and unexpected love are waiting just for you.